What happens when the world's most famous royal walks into a room and nobody looks at her? Imagine arriving at one of Hollywood's most iconic events, a glittering parade that has been a tradition for decades, and expecting the crowd to cheer, cameras to flash, and friends to greet you with open arms. Now imagine instead that the very person leading the celebration, the Grand Marshal, turns his back, refuses to acknowledge your presence, and the world around you seems to pause, as if you've suddenly become invisible. For Meghan Markle, the 93rd annual Hollywood Christmas parade in 2025 became that kind of moment. A moment that nobody saw coming, yet everyone is still talking about. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. In the first seconds of this story, you might ask, how could a Hollywood legend, Luke Wilson, possibly ignore a global figure like Meghan Markle? Was it intentional? Was it a miscommunication? Or was it something far more calculated than anyone realized? The answer is complicated, and the details are even more shocking. But before we dive into the swirl of flashing lights, celebrity whispers, and unexpected drama, consider this. In Hollywood, image is everything. And when a figure like Meghan Markle experiences a public snub, the ripple effects are seismic, touching careers, social media, and even alliances in ways most people don't see. Let's set the stage. The streets of Hollywood Boulevard were electric that morning. Glittering floats lined the route, children in costume waved excitedly, and thousands of spectators filled the sidewalks. Everyone was buzzing about the Grand Marshal. Luke Wilson, a beloved actor known for his calm charisma and decades of Hollywood success. He had the charm, the smile, and the timing that could make any parade memorable. And yet, there was a tension beneath the surface, a subtle undercurrent that only insiders noticed. Whispers traveled through security, murmurs passed between producers, and backstage. Some wondered whether this year's parade would carry more drama than anyone anticipated. Into this scene stepped Meghan Markle. Her appearance was deliberate, calculated, and, as usual, meant to be noticed. She arrived with a carefully curated entourage, cameras in tow, a festive yet sophisticated outfit that screamed elegance and confidence. The crowd saw a royal princess stepping into their world of glitz, lights, and celebration. But what no one expected was how the universe, or at least Hollywood, would respond. From the moment she appeared, Meghan's presence created a ripple. Cameras swiveled. People whispered. Fans in the front rows cheered, some in awe, some in confusion. But for Luke Wilson, the Grand Marshal, something was different. There was no wave, no nod, no acknowledgement. Just a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in posture, a quiet refusal. To anyone watching casually, it might have seemed like a fleeting moment. To those in the know, it was a statement. A deliberate snub in a setting where appearances matter more than words. So why did this happen? Some say it was Hollywood politics. A subtle rebellion against the royal aura Meghan brings wherever she goes. Others speculate it was personal. Luke Wilson is no stranger to media scrutiny, but to actively ignore someone as globally recognized as Meghan Markle at an event of this magnitude, that's bold. That's risky. And it's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. Let's take a closer look at Meghan's arrival. Her expression, captured in dozens of photographs and short video clips, shows a mixture of confidence and subtle tension. Her eyes scan the crowd, searching for familiar faces, allies perhaps, or even just a friendly acknowledgement. And then she saw him, Luke Wilson, standing tall, waving to the crowd, exuding charm and warmth, but not for her. The cameras captured the moment, the fleeting exchange, or lack thereof. Meghan paused. A smile flickered across her face, polite but tight, almost imperceptibly strained. She adjusted her posture, tried to engage with someone else nearby, but the moment had already passed. The snub had been delivered, in silence, with a subtlety only Hollywood insiders could fully understand. Backstage, the tension was palpable. Production assistants whispered into radios, security personnel exchanged looks of uncertainty, and some of Meghan's own team seemed momentarily stunned. How could someone of her status be publicly ignored at an event she was attending with the expectation of visibility? And yet, the moment unfolded exactly that way. It was a paradox. She was visible to everyone, yet acknowledged by none. Meanwhile, social media began its slow awakening. A few clips emerged online within minutes. Observers debated endlessly. Was Luke Wilson rude? Was Meghan overreacting? Or was this a masterclass in subtle power dynamics? The clips spread quickly, the commentary grew heated, and before the parade even began in earnest, the story was already dominating feeds. The world watched, and opinions formed. But as anyone familiar with celebrity culture knows, the real drama rarely occurs in front of cameras. It happens behind closed doors, in whispered phone calls, in private texts that will later leak. And this is where the story becomes even more compelling. Because Meghan, far from being a passive participant, had a response. Not loud, not explosive, but strategic. She adjusted, recalibrated, and made moves designed to regain control of a narrative that was suddenly slipping from her hands. Yet, every action had consequences, some immediate, some delayed. And for Luke Wilson, the Grand Marshal, the decision to ignore her was not without its own repercussions. Imagine standing in her shoes for a moment. A global figure accustomed to attention, respect, and recognition, now navigating a world that refuses to acknowledge her. The internal conflict must have been intense. Pride versus strategy, frustration versus restraint. Every gesture she made was scrutinized, analyzed, and, at times, misinterpreted. Every smile had to mask a subtle anger. Every wave had to balance charm with control. And all the while, the parade marched on, floats glittering, music blaring, crowds cheering, completely unaware of the tension simmering at the center of it all. And yet, Meghan's experience at the parade is emblematic of something much larger. It's not just about a single snub. It's about power, influence, and the fine line between celebrity and royalty in a city that values fame above all else. It's about understanding how gestures, or the absence of gestures, communicate messages louder than any words. And it's about the human desire for acknowledgement, something Meghan, for all her global recognition, was suddenly denied in a very public way. Now, let's pause and consider the reactions. Some insiders report that the moment became a lightning rod for speculation. Friends, colleagues, and casual onlookers all had their opinions. Some claimed Meghan was hurt. Others said she played it cool. Some suggested it was the perfect, calculated moment for her public image. A subtle look what they tried to do, and I stayed composed message. But what everyone agreed on was this. Luke Wilson's refusal to acknowledge her changed the tone of the entire event, from a festive celebration to a tense, almost cinematic drama. And here's where things get even more intriguing. Security reports, private emails, and insider chatter suggest that this snub was not entirely spontaneous. There were meetings, there were discussions, and there were decisions made long before Meghan stepped onto the boulevard. Some speculate that Luke Wilson had his own reasons, perhaps a personal stance, perhaps a calculated effort to assert independence from royal influence in Hollywood. Others believe that the snub was orchestrated by someone else entirely, a hidden hand behind the scenes guiding the narrative for maximum effect. So the question lingers. Was this simply a moment of tension between two high-profile figures, or was it the tip of a much larger iceberg? Could a seemingly small gesture, a refusal to wave, a lack of acknowledgement, really carry such weight in Hollywood and beyond? The answer is yes. In a world where perception is everything, and where every glance is recorded and replayed millions of times, even a tiny act can ripple outward with explosive force. And while the crowd cheered, the floats rolled past, and the cameras continued to flash, Meghan's world had shifted. A subtle tension now hung in the air, one that would set off a chain of events involving leaked videos, social media storms, celebrity whispers, and strategic maneuvers. Every interaction she had from this point forward would be colored by this opening moment. A single, silent snub by Luke Wilson, the Grand Marshal of the 93rd Annual Hollywood Christmas Parade. By now, you might be wondering, how did this escalate? How did a moment so quiet, so understated, capture the attention of Hollywood, royalty watchers, and social media alike? What did Meghan do next? And perhaps most importantly, how did Luke Wilson himself justify the snub when the cameras weren't rolling? The answers are complex, layered, and at times contradictory. They involve backstage strategy, public image management, and the delicate dance of power between a Hollywood veteran and a globally recognized royal. They involve moments that were never meant to be seen, but were captured anyway, later exploding across social media and news outlets. And they involve choices, reactions, and consequences that would shape the narrative of the parade, and perhaps even Meghan Markle's Hollywood journey, in ways nobody anticipated. What happens when Hollywood's calmest, most charismatic actor is given the most visible role of the year, and the world knows it? For the 93rd Annual Hollywood Christmas Parade in 2025, Luke Wilson was announced as Grand Marshal months in advance. On paper, it was the perfect choice. A familiar face, decades of film success, and a reputation for charm that could disarm even the most critical audiences. But as soon as the announcement hit, the rumor mill spun faster than a parade float down Hollywood Boulevard. Some insiders praised the pick as ideal, while others whispered concerns about how the event would unfold with someone as high-profile, and sometimes private, as Luke leading the way. The announcement itself was theatrical. Press releases flooded outlets, accompanied by a professionally edited video montage of Wilson's decades of work in Hollywood. Clips of comedies, dramas, and interviews painted him as approachable, genuine, and effortlessly charismatic. Fans cheered, tweeting their excitement, sharing posts, and preparing to line the streets for the parade. Media outlets speculated on the theme of the parade, the costume floats, and the celebrity interactions expected. And then came the unavoidable question. What about Meghan Markle? She wasn't on the announcement, at least not publicly, but insiders had learned she had expressed interest in attending, as she often did for high-profile events in Hollywood. While her public appearances were carefully orchestrated, she was no stranger to moments where she could command attention and subtly assert influence. In Hollywood, where visibility equals power, Meghan attending a parade led by Luke Wilson could have been a perfect storm of attention, cameras, and headlines. But, as anyone familiar with celebrity dynamics knows, attention can cut both ways. Behind closed doors, the decision to appoint Luke as Grand Marshal was not unanimous. Some producers reportedly argued that including Meghan would guarantee record-breaking social media engagement. Others countered, suggesting that her presence might overshadow the parade's intended focus on Hollywood tradition and community celebration. The debate was tense, with multiple conference calls, emails, and last-minute decisions shaping the final outcome. By the time the press release went public, the decision was clear. Luke Wilson, solo, would lead the parade, and Meghan Markle's attendance remained unconfirmed. Yet, the story had already gained momentum. When the news broke, fans and observers speculated endlessly. Some assumed Meghan would attend anyway. After all, when she wants visibility, she often finds a way. Others interpreted her non-inclusion as a snub, perhaps subtle, perhaps intentional, perhaps a mix of both. Hollywood's gossip culture thrives on such ambiguity. The public loves a story where expectation meets tension, especially when royalty is involved. Luke Wilson himself was aware of the attention. Multiple interviews in the weeks leading up to the parade hinted at the responsibility he felt. He described the honor with humility, emphasizing the joy of participating in a beloved holiday tradition. It's about the families, the kids, and celebrating the season, he said in one radio interview, downplaying any focus on celebrity appearances. But privately, sources claim he was keenly aware of the rumors about Meghan Markle. He understood that her presence, or absence, could dominate coverage, overshadowing everything else. And for someone who values a quiet professional reputation, that prospect was unsettling. Hollywood insiders also noted an interesting dynamic. Luke Wilson, though generally amiable, has a history of distancing himself from overt celebrity theatrics. He has rarely been involved in tabloid scandals, maintains low-profile relationships with media, and is known for a subtle, understated style of humor. In other words, he is the kind of celebrity who lets his work speak for itself rather than courting attention through social optics. And this personality trait, while endearing to many, would become central to the story that unfolded when Meghan arrived. Meanwhile, Meghan's camp was reportedly preparing for multiple scenarios. From the moment the parade announcement was made, her team debated logistics, optics, and strategic positioning. Should she attend to maintain visibility? Should she make a statement by staying away? Or was there a more subtle approach, arriving quietly, blending in, and letting her presence speak for itself. The stakes were high because, in Hollywood, the narrative isn't determined by what happens alone. It's determined by who controls perception. And in this case, two very different styles were on a collision course. Luke's understated, private demeanor and Meghan's calculated, high-visibility presence. As the weeks passed and the parade approached, media speculation intensified. Entertainment outlets ran speculative pieces. Will Meghan attend the parade? Luke Wilson to face royal guest? Hollywood tension or festive fun? Social media discussions swirled, hashtags trended, and fans debated the potential dynamics between the two personalities. The tension wasn't just hypothetical. It was already shaping expectations, framing every decision, and foreshadowing a confrontation that few could have predicted. Insiders revealed that Luke was briefed on Meghan's potential attendance, but was left with autonomy on how to handle it. He was advised, stay natural. Treat it like any other celebrity interaction. But sources close to him claimed that he had made a personal decision, one that would later become central to the drama. If Meghan appeared, he would acknowledge the crowd's attention, but not her directly. It was subtle, calculated, and it was precisely the kind of understated tension that, in Hollywood, could ignite massive speculation. On the other side, Meghan's team was reportedly strategizing for every eventuality. They prepared backup plans, media statements, and positioning strategies. Her goal was simple: be seen, be acknowledged, and maintain control of her narrative. After all, she had cultivated a brand that thrives on visibility, influence, and subtle signals of status. Being ignored, especially in front of cameras, was not part of the plan. Yet, unbeknownst to her, the plan she had in mind was about to collide with one Luke Wilson had already quietly prepared. The announcement of Luke as Grand Marshal also set off reactions among other celebrities, producers, and the parade committee. Some were thrilled, celebrating the combination of Hollywood tradition and charm. Others were nervous, anticipating the inevitable media attention Meghan's presence would bring. And as everyone speculated, a quiet undercurrent formed. This was no longer just a parade. This was a stage for personalities, power, and influence. A stage where subtle gestures could carry monumental weight. By the time parade day arrived, the tension had reached a simmering point. Luke Wilson would lead the procession, confident yet cautious. Meghan Markle, potentially attending, would bring with her the expectations of royalty, celebrity culture, and a media frenzy that could overshadow everyone else. The crowds were unaware, the floats were polished, the performers rehearsed, but behind the scenes, an invisible drama was brewing, one that would unfold in real time, with consequences no one could predict. And then it happened. A simple, quiet moment that would ignite speculation, social media debates, and Hollywood gossip for weeks. Meghan arrived. The streets were buzzing. Cameras swiveled. And then, the first eyes met, or didn't. Because Luke Wilson, standing tall at the forefront of the parade, made a choice. A choice that would shock some, confuse others, and instantly become the defining moment of the 2025 Hollywood Christmas parade. What exactly happened in that first second of visibility? How did Meghan react, and what ripple effects did that single decision create? The moment everyone had been waiting for, or dreading, arrived with a quiet yet unmistakable fanfare. Meghan Markle stepped onto Hollywood Boulevard, her presence immediately commanding attention. Cameras swiveled, smartphones lifted, and the murmurs of the crowd turned into a low, excited hum. She moved with precision, the elegance of her posture, the confident sway of her walk, and the subtle sparkle of her outfit all calculated to draw eyes without screaming for them. Yet in this city, where image is currency, even the slightest miscalculation could spiral into chaos. As Meghan approached the parade route, the first thing that became immediately apparent was the contrast between expectation and reality. Fans had gathered in droves, some genuinely excited to see a member of the British royal family in Hollywood, others skeptical, anticipating a manufactured performance. And then there were the cameras, dozens of them, capturing her every step from every angle, broadcasting live to millions around the world. In her world, this level of visibility was familiar, but what she encountered next was anything but familiar. Luke Wilson was already there. Positioned at the center of the parade, waving to the crowd, his smile warm, his demeanor casual. To any casual observer, he appeared approachable, relaxed, embodying the charm Hollywood had celebrated for decades. But Meghan's eyes met his, or at least attempted to. And in that instant, something subtle, almost imperceptible, disrupted the moment. He did not acknowledge her. Not a nod, not a wave, not even a slight shift of posture. He continued to engage with the crowd, the floats, and the cameras as if she had never appeared at all. The subtlety of the snub made it more powerful. To the average onlooker, nothing may have seemed amiss. But for Meghan, the message was immediate and unmistakable. She had been rendered invisible by someone who commanded the spotlight in that very moment. The tension between visibility and acknowledgement had shifted dramatically, and the effect was immediate. Her reaction, as captured by cameras and described by insiders, was a complex mixture of surprise, composure, and restrained frustration. There was a flicker of disbelief, a pause that lasted only a fraction of a second, but enough to signal to the world, and the people closest to her, that this was unexpected. Meghan was someone used to being seen, recognized, and acknowledged. And in that moment, that fundamental expectation had been denied. The entourage accompanying her responded swiftly, a mixture of coordination and controlled panic. Security moved slightly to shield her from any potential disruption, while assistants whispered tactical suggestions for maintaining composure and controlling the narrative. But no matter how organized the team, the subtle power play unfolding between Luke Wilson and Meghan was impossible to manage completely. The optics of the moment had already been set, and the cameras, social media, and crowd would record and interpret them in real time. As Meghan tried to regain control, moving further along the parade route and engaging with the crowd, a paradox emerged. She was undeniably visible. Cameras focused on her, fans waved, some cheered, but the acknowledgement she sought from the figure at the parade's epicenter was missing. The public, the press, and millions online would later dissect this moment in excruciating detail. The flick of an eye, a slight turn of the head, the calculated adjustment of a posture. Every small gesture became amplified, analyzed, and discussed. Hollywood, however, is a city that thrives on narrative tension. And the tension between Meghan Markle and Luke Wilson quickly became the central storyline, overshadowing the floats, the performers, and even the carefully choreographed spectacle that had been rehearsed for weeks. Insiders later revealed that producers and coordinators had grown nervous, uncertain whether the unfolding silent standoff would remain manageable. Every step Meghan took seemed laden with intent, and every deliberate movement by Luke amplified the drama. Social media, of course, responded instantly. Short video clips of the moment, Luke smiling broadly at the crowd while Meghan attempted a subtle wave, circulated within minutes. Commenters debated endlessly. Was Luke rude? Was Meghan overreacting? Or was this a perfect demonstration of Hollywood tension meeting royal poise? Hashtags proliferated, fan theories multiplied, and the narrative quickly spiraled beyond anyone's control. Yet, while the public spectacle unfolded, the private dynamics behind the parade were even more intense. According to insiders, Meghan's camp had meticulously planned her route, positioning, and timing to maximize visibility. Every float interaction, every wave to the crowd, every strategic camera angle had been calculated. But Luke Wilson's deliberate lack of acknowledgement disrupted the plan entirely, creating a power dynamic that Meghan had rarely faced in Hollywood. And while she adjusted, recalibrated, and attempted to command attention in other ways, the snub had already set the tone. Adding complexity to the scenario, other celebrities and parade participants began noticing the tension. Whispers circulated backstage. Did you see what just happened? Some sympathized with Meghan, recognizing the subtle humiliation. Others admired Luke's audacity, interpreting the silence as a statement of independence or personal boundary. And a few savvy observers immediately recognized the media potential. This was the kind of story that could dominate headlines, trending on social media, and drive engagement for weeks. Meghan, however, could not rely on external opinions to influence the moment. She was forced to navigate the delicate balance of public composure, media perception, and personal pride. She smiled, waved, and engaged with fans, projecting confidence while privately acknowledging the sting of the snub. Emotional restraint, a hallmark of her public appearances, became both shield and weapon. The smile conveyed grace, the slight pause conveyed tension, and the calculated gestures maintained narrative control in a situation where control was slipping. Meanwhile, Luke Wilson continued leading the parade, seemingly oblivious to the scrutiny. Or was he? Insiders suggest that he was acutely aware of the optics, deliberately maintaining a warm demeanor toward the crowd while ignoring the royal figure attempting to capture attention. This quiet defiance was amplified by the subtlety of the moment. A nod would have diffused tension, a wave would have signaled acknowledgment. His choice to withhold recognition sent a message far louder than words could have expressed, a calculated move, executed with precision and poise. The psychological tension between them became almost cinematic. Meghan's attempts to regain acknowledgment clashed with Luke's deliberate aloofness. Each step forward along the parade route was layered with strategy, subtlety, and public image calculation. By the time she reached the midpoint of the route, it was clear that the silent standoff had become the event's focal point. Floats glittered, performers danced, and crowds cheered. But the true story unfolded in the space between two individuals, a story of power, visibility, and human ego. Behind the scenes, the energy was equally charged. Parade organizers monitored the situation closely, concerned about optics and potential disruptions. Security personnel remained alert, ready to intervene if tensions escalated. And Meghan's own team quietly adjusted strategy in real time, guiding her to moments where cameras would catch her smile, her engagement with fans, and her subtle gestures of grace, all while maintaining composure under a scrutiny that was now magnified exponentially. But the public's reaction was unrelenting. Video clips circulated online, with captions speculating on the royal snub and Luke Wilson's audacious behavior. Comments poured in. Fans were outraged, amused, or fascinated. Media outlets debated endlessly, with headlines framing the incident as either an intentional slight, a personal feud, or a carefully orchestrated display of celebrity independence. Analysts dissected body language, timing, and gestures, turning a brief, subtle moment into a global conversation about power, etiquette, and visibility. As the parade continued, Meghan's response evolved. She engaged more directly with fans, projected a controlled energy, and subtly reclaimed visibility. But the tension lingered, an invisible thread connecting her to the figure leading the parade, a thread that would define the event in the eyes of the public. Every wave, every smile, every subtle shift in posture became a performance, a calculated interplay of human emotion, public perception, and unspoken power dynamics. And just when it seemed the parade might continue without incident, whispers began circulating backstage. Rumors of leaked communications, behind-the-scenes commentary, and insider speculation suggested that the silent standoff was only the beginning. Observers speculated that further actions, interactions, media releases, and public appearances would escalate the drama in ways nobody expected. Because in Hollywood, visibility is everything, and being ignored by someone as central as Luke Wilson was a story that would not remain contained. Meghan's arrival had set the stage, but the consequences of that moment, the ripple effects, the media frenzy, the subtle power play, were only beginning to unfold. The Hollywood Christmas parade is more than just a festive spectacle. It's a finely tuned machine, a choreography of floats, performers, celebrities, and cameras designed to dazzle audiences while maintaining an air of effortless celebration. But behind the glitter and lights, the reality is far more complicated. In 2025, as Meghan Markle arrived and Luke Wilson assumed his role as Grand Marshal, the parade became a theater not just of public performance, but of subtle power struggles, whispered strategies, and unspoken tensions that most viewers would never see. From the moment Meghan stepped onto the boulevard, the backstage world shifted. Coordinators, producers, and security teams had rehearsed schedules and protocols to the second. Each celebrity had a designated position, each float a precise timing. Cameras were placed for maximum impact, and social media teams were ready to capture every highlight. But the silent standoff between Meghan and Luke disrupted the choreography, forcing everyone behind the scenes into high alert. Insiders reported that parade organizers were immediately concerned. There were multiple emergency meetings, small, whispered huddles among producers and coordinators. "We didn't anticipate this level of tension," one source admitted. Security, normally focused on crowd management, now had to consider public image and optics. Would the silent standoff escalate? Would cameras capture a confrontation? And most importantly, how would this affect public perception of both Meghan Markle and the parade itself? The tension extended beyond security. Backstage, other celebrities and performers were observing the dynamics, adjusting their own behavior accordingly. Some whispered in awe, "Did you see that? She's being ignored, completely ignored." Others tried to remain neutral, maintaining professionalism while silently analyzing the implications. Hollywood is a city of networks and alliances. Every gesture is noted, every action dissected. The moment Meghan was snubbed was not just a public event. It became a backstage chess game, with observers calculating the consequences for alliances, careers, and reputations. Luke Wilson, for his part, remained outwardly calm. His smile never wavered. His demeanor appeared effortless. But sources close to him insist that his composure was strategic. He understood that the parade was a live, high-visibility event, and that any overt acknowledgment of Meghan could transform the silent tension into a spectacle he wanted to avoid. His approach was subtle: acknowledge the crowd, maintain warmth, and avoid the royal figure entirely. In Hollywood, such restraint can be more powerful than any public statement. Silence becomes a language in itself, and Luke spoke it fluently. Meghan's team, meanwhile, was in constant adjustment mode. They monitored camera angles, repositioned her for maximum visibility, and coached her to maintain composure despite the snub. But even with strategy in place, the subtle psychological pressure was immense. Meghan, accustomed to commanding attention, faced a situation where a single figure's refusal to acknowledge her presence disrupted her control. It was a test not just of patience, but of public poise, and the stakes were extraordinarily high. And it wasn't just about visibility. Behind the scenes, there were whispers of personal dynamics influencing the moment. Hollywood insiders hinted at a history of differing philosophies between Luke and Meghan. Luke, known for his understated charm and preference for privacy, is the kind of actor who shuns overt publicity stunts. Meghan, conversely, has mastered the art of visibility and influence, blending royal poise with Hollywood media strategy. The collision of these two styles, one deliberate, one meticulously public, set the stage for conflict, even without a single word being spoken. Even production logistics were affected. Camera operators had to decide how to capture both the floats and the unfolding drama between the two figures. Directors of photography, live stream coordinators, and social media teams were in constant communication, trying to balance coverage of the parade's scheduled highlights with the unplanned but irresistible tension dominating the route. Every float, every performance, suddenly became secondary to a narrative nobody had anticipated. A silent clash of personalities in front of thousands of spectators and millions online. One of the most intriguing aspects of this backstage tension was the sheer unpredictability of human behavior. Meghan's reactions were closely monitored. Every subtle smile, glance, and hand movement was observed by her team to maintain her public image. Luke's behavior, though calm, was equally calculated. Every decision, when to wave, when to look, when to step aside, was informed by years of experience navigating Hollywood's optics and social hierarchies. The result was a live, unscripted drama that was as much about psychological strategy as it was about the parade itself. Insider accounts suggest that some parade staff were caught in a difficult position. They had to navigate between maintaining the festive spirit, protecting celebrity guests, and managing the ripple effects of a subtle but high-stakes tension. One producer reportedly said, "We're used to managing chaos, but this is different. There's no shouting, no fights, just a quiet tension that makes every step feel like a potential headline." Meanwhile, whispers began circulating about possible interventions. Some suggested introducing distractions, like performers or surprise floats, to redirect attention and reduce the intensity of the silent standoff. Others argued against interference, believing that the moment, however awkward, would generate the engagement and media coverage the parade desired. Hollywood thrives on spectacle, and even backstage, the calculus of attention was relentless. Every potential solution carried risks, every decision was measured against possible fallout. And then there were the unexpected observers, other celebrities, local dignitaries, and even members of the public who had backstage access. Each brought their own perspectives, adding layers of scrutiny to the event. Some sympathized with Meghan, noting the subtle humiliation of being ignored in front of cameras and crowds. Others quietly admired Luke's discipline and resolve, interpreting his actions as a nuanced assertion of autonomy and personal boundaries. The backstage world had become a microcosm of the larger dynamics unfolding. Power, perception, and performance intertwined in ways that few outside the inner circle could fully grasp. Adding to the complexity, the psychological toll on Meghan was immediate. Sources describe a mixture of controlled frustration and strategic adaptation. She could not allow visible irritation to undermine her public persona. Instead, she adjusted, recalibrated, and subtly redirected attention to herself through engagement with the crowd, gestures of grace, and moments designed to be captured by cameras. In effect, she had to fight a silent battle on multiple fronts, controlling public perception, maintaining composure, and navigating the unpredictable human dynamics of a parade that had suddenly become more theater than celebration. And while Meghan adapted, Luke remained unwavering, a steady force at the parade's epicenter. His decisions were deliberate, small gestures, subtle timing, and consistent focus on the crowd rather than the royal figure attempting to command his attention. It was a study in restraint, in the power of silence, and in the effect of deliberate non-engagement on public perception. What some might have interpreted as rudeness, others understood as a sophisticated navigation of celebrity dynamics. An acknowledgment that in Hollywood, visibility can be weaponized, and silence can speak louder than words. As the parade continued, the tension began to spread beyond backstage. Observers on social media, armed with video clips and live streams, began analyzing every interaction frame by frame. Every second of Meghan's response, every step she took, and every subtle acknowledgement, or lack thereof, was dissected, shared, and debated. The backstage tension had transformed into a public spectacle, amplifying the stakes exponentially. And still, the most consequential moments were yet to unfold. Because while cameras, crowds, and media were fixated on visible reactions, private communications and whispered strategies backstage hinted at something even more explosive. Texts exchanged between organizers, murmurs among security personnel, and insider leaks all pointed to the fact that the silent standoff was only the opening act. A series of revelations, calculated moves, and unexpected interventions would soon dominate the parade in ways nobody could have anticipated. The psychological chess game was in full effect, Meghan recalibrating her visibility, Luke maintaining his disciplined distance, and the parade staff navigating a labyrinth of optics, media perception, and human behavior. Every gesture mattered, every glance mattered, and the consequences, both immediate and long-term, were beginning to crystallize, setting the stage for a moment that would dominate headlines, social media feeds, and Hollywood conversations for weeks. Hollywood thrives on drama, but even by its own high standards, what unfolded during the 93rd Annual Hollywood Christmas Parade in 2025 was unprecedented. The quiet tension that had been simmering behind the scenes and along the parade route finally erupted in what insiders are calling the mask drop moment. A split second of raw emotion, subtle defiance, and public acknowledgement that changed everything. The moment itself was deceptively simple. Meghan Markle, having navigated the initial snub with her characteristic poise, had reached a critical point along the parade route. Cameras were trained on her as she engaged with the crowd, smiling, waving, and performing the choreography of visibility with near-perfect precision. But her eyes kept flicking toward Luke Wilson, who remained at the forefront of the parade, smiling at the crowd, waving, charming, and yet resolutely refusing to acknowledge her presence. The mask drop moment happened almost imperceptibly, captured in a brief but viral clip. Meghan, for the first time in full view of the cameras, allowed a subtle shift in expression, an unmistakable flicker of frustration, a tightening of her jaw, and a brief pause in her otherwise flawless performance. It wasn't dramatic enough to disrupt the crowd, but for those watching closely, it was a crack in the carefully curated image she had projected. In Hollywood, where every gesture is scrutinized and interpreted, the crack was enough to send shockwaves. What made this moment so powerful was its context. For weeks, Meghan's team had prepared every detail of her appearance, from outfit to posture to timing, designed to ensure flawless control of her image. Every wave, every glance, every smile was meant to reinforce authority, elegance, and media dominance. And yet, here was Luke Wilson, at once calm and deliberate, undermining that control without a single word, without a single overt gesture. He didn't need to speak. His silence had already become a language, and Meghan's subtle reaction was its first public response. Behind the scenes, the production team reacted almost immediately. Camera operators shifted focus, trying to capture both her reaction and the parade's progression. Social media teams, already tracking live engagement, realized that the clip would explode online. One producer reportedly muttered, "This is it, the moment that everyone will replay, analyze, and argue about." And they were right. Within minutes, the first snippets of the mask drop began circulating online. Viewers immediately began dissecting the micro-expressions, the posture, the body language. To them, it was more than a moment, it was a statement. For Meghan, the mask drop was both an acknowledgment of frustration and a tactical pivot. She had been ignored, subtly snubbed, and the public had witnessed it. But she wasn't defeated. Instead, the flicker of tension became fuel. She recalibrated her engagement with the crowd, projecting warmth and charm, while simultaneously sending a message. Luke Wilson, meanwhile, maintained his composure. To the casual observer, he remained the picture of calm and charm, waving to the crowd and engaging with spectators as if nothing had happened. But insiders claim he was fully aware of the viral potential of Meghan's reaction. His choice to maintain silence wasn't passive, it was strategic. He understood that visibility in Hollywood doesn't require shouting. It can be asserted through restraint, timing, and deliberate inaction. And in that context, his refusal to acknowledge her amplified her reaction, making the mask drop moment all the more explosive. The crowd, largely unaware of the backstage intricacies, experienced the moment differently. Some noticed the subtle tension and murmured in speculation. Others simply felt an unexplained energy shift, a brief undercurrent of drama threading through the festive atmosphere. But for those following the event online or viewing the viral clips, the significance was immediate. Media outlets exploded with headlines. Royal snub in Hollywood? Luke Wilson ignores Meghan Markle. Mask drop moment sparks social media frenzy. The narrative quickly spun out of control, the parade itself becoming secondary to the unfolding human drama. Social media, as expected, amplified the stakes. Within hours, analysis videos appeared, breaking down every frame of Meghan's expression, comparing it to Luke's posture, interpreting the dynamics with speculative headlines and dramatic commentary. Influencers debated whether Meghan had been wronged, whether Luke was asserting independence, or whether this was a calculated publicity maneuver on both sides. The mask drop moment, a fraction of a second captured by a lens, had become a global conversation. But what truly made this moment historic wasn't just the reaction, it was the psychological impact. For Meghan, it was a rare public acknowledgement of the tension she often navigates behind the scenes. For Luke, it was a demonstration of subtle power, a reminder that in Hollywood, control is sometimes wielded silently. And for the parade itself, the moment transformed an ordinary holiday event into a spectacle of human behavior, strategy, and raw emotion. A story that would dominate headlines for days, if not weeks. Backstage, the reactions were intense. Meghan's team immediately analyzed the clip, discussing whether it aligned with her intended public image. Some suggested that the subtle display of frustration humanized her, showing a vulnerability rarely captured in her appearances. Others worried that the public might interpret it as a lapse in composure. Simultaneously, Luke's handlers observed the same clip and considered the long-term impact of his strategic non-engagement. Every gesture, no matter how small, was now part of a larger narrative that neither side could fully control. The mask drop also had implications beyond the parade. Hollywood gossip columns, entertainment news outlets, and social media commentators framed it as a clash of worlds. Royal elegance versus Hollywood charm, calculated visibility versus understated restraint. Analysts speculated on personal motivations, career strategies, and media impact. The story wasn't just about a snub. It became a study in human behavior, celebrity culture, and the power of subtle gestures in public spaces. And yet, despite the public spectacle, the most intriguing developments were still unfolding behind the scenes. Insiders hinted at private conversations, strategic pivots, and potential interventions that would escalate the drama even further. Security, organizers, and celebrity handlers were all aware that the mask drop moment was only the beginning, a prelude to a chain of events that would push both Meghan Markle and Luke Wilson into uncharted territory. Because in Hollywood, a single moment can define a narrative, shape public perception, and alter relationships in ways nobody expects. The mask drop wasn't just a fleeting flicker of emotion. It was the catalyst for a dramatic series of events that would dominate headlines, social media feeds, and insider conversations for weeks. And for those watching closely, the tension promised to escalate even further. As Meghan Markle's subtle mask drop reverberated through the cameras, the reaction of the crowd on Hollywood Boulevard became a story in itself. For the thousands lining the streets, many had come expecting a traditional Christmas spectacle. Floats adorned with glittering lights, performers dancing to seasonal classics, and celebrities greeting their fans in a festive, joyful environment. What they didn't anticipate was a moment of silent tension so palpable it cut through the music, the laughter, and the holiday cheer. The first reactions were almost instinctive. A few audience members, seated close to the parade route, noticed Meghan's pause and flick of emotion. Whispers spread through the front rows like wildfire. "Did you see that?" one onlooker muttered. She's frustrated." Another observer, trying to maintain composure, pointed toward Luke Wilson, gesturing to the calm Grand Marshal at the center of the parade. "And he's just ignoring her." They exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether what they were witnessing was a breach of etiquette, a personal feud, or something else entirely. Children, oblivious to the layers of adult nuance, continued to wave and cheer. But even among the youngest viewers, there was a subtle shift. Cameras and parents' phones captured every movement, every flicker of expression, creating a visual record that would spread far beyond the streets of Hollywood. In an instant, what might have been an ordinary parade became a live tableau of celebrity dynamics under scrutiny. As the moment was captured and circulated, reactions diversified. Some sections of the crowd, loyal to Meghan or enthralled by the presence of royalty, began murmuring support. "She deserves acknowledgment," someone whispered. "That's so disrespectful." Others, perhaps fans of Luke or neutral observers, interpreted his actions differently. "He's maintaining professionalism," one man commented. "You can't just demand attention." The divide was immediate and visceral, reflecting broader societal debates about power, visibility, and respect. Social media amplified the crowd's reactions exponentially. Clips of the mask drop moment, filmed by smartphones, were uploaded in real time, accompanied by commentary ranging from outrage to admiration. On platforms like X, Threads, and TikTok, the discussion exploded. Hashtags like #MeghanIgnored, #LukeWins, and #Hollywood tension began trending within minutes. Influencers and entertainment commentators dissected every micro-expression, comparing Meghan's subtle frustration to Luke's stoic composure. Engagement skyrocketed, driving millions of impressions worldwide. Back on the parade route, the crowd's energy shifted in real time. Supporters of Meghan waved more enthusiastically, trying to catch her attention and express solidarity. Meanwhile, Luke's admirers cheered louder, celebrating his apparent restraint and composure in the face of royal presence. The dynamic created a peculiar tension, a silent tug-of-war playing out in live time. The atmosphere, once purely festive, had transformed into a charged theater of human emotion and social signaling. Inside the VIP sections and private viewing areas, reactions were equally intense. Industry insiders, celebrities, and producers watched the unfolding moment with a mix of fascination and apprehension. Some applauded Meghan's subtle display of vulnerability, interpreting it as a humanizing break from her highly polished public persona. Others praised Luke's calm and unwavering approach, recognizing the difficulty of maintaining composure in such a high-stakes situation. In Hollywood, these moments are rare. A silent conflict with both tactical and emotional significance that instantly becomes part of collective memory. But the crowd's reactions weren't uniform. Analysts and social media commentators noted regional differences in perception. Fans familiar with royal protocol and Meghan's media presence interpreted the mask drop as a personal affront, a calculated slight by Luke. Conversely, Hollywood-savvy viewers recognized it as a demonstration of boundary setting, an assertion of personal autonomy, and a subtle reminder that visibility alone does not command attention. The paradox of perception, how the same moment could be read so differently, added to the viral nature of the incident. As the parade progressed, the crowd's attention remained fixated on the unfolding narrative between Meghan and Luke. Floats passed by, performers danced, and music played, yet the silent tension between the two figures dominated the collective focus. Shouts, cheers, and applause were punctuated by murmurs and pointed gestures, creating an undercurrent of intrigue that organizers had never anticipated. Even the background spectators, those initially focused on the spectacle rather than the celebrities, found themselves drawn into the drama. Cameras trained on Meghan captured her subtle recalibrations, the way she engaged with fans while maintaining composure, and the flickers of emotion that suggested a mix of frustration, strategy, and determination. Luke's continued professionalism, the smiles, the waves, the charm, served as both contrast and counterbalance, heightening the dramatic tension. Insiders later revealed that the crowd's reactions had an immediate feedback effect on both Meghan and Luke. Meghan's team adjusted her positioning and engagement strategies in real time, encouraging her to maintain visual dominance with fans while projecting composure and grace. Luke, observing the subtle shifts in audience energy, maintained his focus on crowd engagement while deliberately avoiding acknowledgment of Meghan. It was a live psychological chess match, with the crowd itself acting as a piece on the board, reactive, influential, and unpredictable. The moment also revealed a deeper truth about public perception and celebrity behavior. The audience is never passive. Their reactions influence the narrative, shape the optics, and amplify the stakes. In this case, the crowd's divided reactions created layers of interpretation, making every gesture and every pause infinitely more consequential. The spectacle of the parade had become a meta-performance, a performance about performance itself. And yet, for all the analysis, the most critical moments were still unfolding out of direct view. Whispers backstage hinted at private discussions, strategic pivots, and unexpected interventions that could escalate the drama even further. Security personnel were on high alert, production staff were adjusting camera angles, and Meghan's team was considering next moves that could reclaim control of the narrative or risk intensifying tension. The mask drop moment, witnessed and amplified by the crowd, had set the stage. But as insiders repeatedly warned, the real escalation was yet to come. For the crowd, the parade was festive. For social media, it was viral. For the participants, it was a living study in control, image, and human behavior. Because in Hollywood, the audience is never just watching. They are active participants in the story. Their reactions feed the drama, influence the players, and shape the narrative in ways that can transform a simple parade into a historic spectacle. And just when it seemed the crowd's reaction had reached its peak, a new development on the parade route threatened to upend everything, escalating the tension into something no one, neither viewers nor insiders, could have predicted. After the mask drop moment and the crowd's divided reactions, it became clear that Meghan Markle was facing one of the most psychologically complex challenges of her public life. The parade, meant to celebrate festivity, family, and community, had transformed into a stage for subtle but high-stakes power dynamics. And now, Meghan had to act. She needed to reclaim control, not through confrontation, but through strategy, presence, and perception. Immediately following the silent snub from Luke Wilson, Meghan's team huddled discreetly behind the parade route. They assessed the situation with meticulous attention, calculating her options in real time. The stakes were enormous. Any visible lapse in composure could fuel negative headlines, while a misjudged gesture might amplify Luke's apparent dominance. In Hollywood, and especially when royalty is involved, every move matters. Every glance, every step, every interaction could be recorded, analyzed, and critiqued by millions. The plan they devised was precise. First, Meghan would maintain visibility with the crowd, engaging, smiling, and waving in a way that projected warmth and accessibility. This was meant to offset the psychological impact of Luke's deliberate distance. Second, she would subtly reclaim narrative control by orchestrating moments that cameras and fans would inevitably capture. Spontaneous interactions, carefully timed gestures, and unspoken cues signaling confidence and authority. Third, she would manage social optics, subtle microexpressions, controlled pacing, and slight adjustments in body language to convey composure, poise, and awareness. As she moved along the parade route, Meghan began executing the plan. She adjusted her posture, engaging with fans more directly, extending hands for waves, and creating a dynamic energy that encouraged media attention. Every smile, every nod, every slight lean toward onlookers was calculated to signal confidence and command presence. It was not just about being seen. It was about asserting control in a moment where visibility had been compromised. However, reclaiming control in public isn't a simple task. Despite her efforts, the invisible tension between her and Luke remained. He continued to focus on the crowd, waving, smiling, and leading the parade with calm charm, refusing to acknowledge her presence directly. Every gesture he made reinforced the subtle power dynamic established earlier. Visibility is not ownership, and presence does not guarantee acknowledgement. This forced Meghan to constantly recalibrate her strategy in real time. The psychological complexity was compounded by the live nature of the event. Thousands of spectators lined the streets, capturing video on smartphones, tweeting observations, and sharing commentary online. Cameras on the official live stream were trained on both her and the parade's highlights. This meant that any misstep, hesitation, or unintended signal could become instantly magnified, viral, and subject to interpretation by millions. The stakes were not abstract. They were immediate, public, and relentless. Insiders report that Meghan's approach combined subtle assertiveness with an almost surgical awareness of optics. She initiated brief interactions with performers, leaned in to wave to specific fans, and allowed fleeting moments of genuine expression, tiny smiles, soft glances, that humanized her without relinquishing control. Observers later described it as a delicate dance, a mix of strategy, emotion, and instinct honed through years of managing public perception. Yet even with these calculated actions, Luke's continued silence presented a persistent obstacle. By refusing acknowledgement, he was essentially controlling a narrative he wasn't actively trying to dominate. Silence, as anyone familiar with psychological dynamics knows, can be one of the most potent forms of influence. Every wave Meghan gave, every smile she projected, was counterbalanced by Luke's deliberate inaction. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but deeply effective. Particularly in a setting where attention and acknowledgement were the ultimate currency. The crowd continued to react, amplifying the tension. Fans cheered more vigorously when Meghan engaged, while others whispered about the ongoing standoff, dissecting every frame on their phones. Some observers were fascinated by the psychological duel, while others debated its implications. Was Meghan losing control, or was she executing a refined strategy under pressure? Social media commentary surged, with posts analyzing body language, posture, and even clothing choices as indicators of power, poise, and intent. Backstage, Meghan's team monitored every angle. They advised minor adjustments, a hand wave here, a nod there, subtle eye contact with fans, and careful spacing to ensure her visibility remained unchallenged. Security personnel, though primarily tasked with safety, also became inadvertent agents in her strategy, guiding her along routes that maximized camera capture and audience attention. The coordination was seamless, yet under immense pressure. One miscalculation could undo hours of planning. At the same time, Luke's approach remained unchanged. His composed focus on the crowd created a counter-narrative, charisma and restraint as a statement of authority. While Meghan sought acknowledgment, Luke demonstrated that influence and attention could be asserted without confrontation. It was a lesson in subtle power dynamics, and it was unfolding live before the eyes of millions. By the midpoint of the parade, Meghan's efforts to reclaim control had begun to show results. Video clips circulating online captured her engaging warmly with fans, laughing at spontaneous moments, and appearing fully in command of her presence. Analysts described her demeanor as confident yet approachable, frustrated yet resilient, a study in balancing vulnerability and authority under scrutiny. The narrative shifted subtly. While Luke's silence remained a central story, Meghan's strategic response reframed her as an active participant in the unfolding drama rather than a passive target of a snub. However, the escalation was far from over. Insider accounts revealed that Meghan's team had identified additional opportunities to assert control, moments to interact with performers, floats, and crowd segments that would produce high-impact images for social media. They also coordinated subtle timing adjustments, allowing her to appear in multiple key camera shots while maintaining narrative cohesion. Every detail was meticulously managed to ensure she reclaimed as much visibility as possible without appearing reactive or ungraceful. Yet, even with careful planning, unpredictability loomed. The parade was live, the crowd was unpredictable, and Luke's steadfast refusal to acknowledge her maintained a persistent psychological pressure. It was a delicate balance, one that required constant adjustment, mental fortitude, and strategic foresight. Every step Meghan took was both a maneuver to reclaim control and a subtle negotiation of public perception. The tension reached its peak during a pivotal moment when Meghan positioned herself near the grand finale float. The crowd's attention was split, cameras focused on both the spectacle and her movements. She executed a series of gestures designed to maximize visual dominance. An elegant wave, a confident nod, and a poised smile. The public interpreted these moves variably. Some praised her resilience. Others criticized perceived overcompensation. But the message was clear. She was asserting her presence, reclaiming agency, and refusing to be sidelined. And yet, the silent psychological duel with Luke remained unresolved. His continued composure, focus, and subtle control over visibility maintained the underlying tension that had defined the event from the beginning. The stage was set for the next